Hello and welcome back to the building of this vintage model, a Mercury Matador. Thanks for the very kind comments so far. Lots of nostalgia by people who've built this model in the past, back in their youth. I'm enjoying it up to now. It's really nice feeling building a traditional model. I think it is anyway. As you can see, I've built both of the sides. I'm really happy with the way they've came out. I tend to do them one at a time. I know the traditional approach is to build one on top of the other with some wax paper between the two. Somebody even suggested that to be really authentic, I should use some balsa cement, with a smile on his face, I think, because the stuff was useless. I have actually got some balsa cement, and just for nostalgia I might screw the top off so I can smell the fumes in the background. But I've been using CA and Gorilla Glue for putting this together, combination of the two. These are done. I'm going to make sure they're lined up accurately and drill through the positions for the dowels that hold the wings on, and then they go the other way around, so that's the outside. What I'm going to do next is actually make these into fuselage, put the two together. And the first stage of that is boxing up the formers, which are in the front of the model and help set it up nice and square. Well, hello Missy, wait a moment. You saying hello? She just wants a fuss. So I'm going to look at them now and explain how I've modified them and changed them. Just wait a second while I sort this cat out. These are the formers, and let's just explain what I've done. So the first thing with F7, which goes towards the back of the cabin area, I've cut out a hole because obviously it's going to be radio controlled and we need the runs for the connections. I may be using pull, I think, for this model, we'll see. But I need to be able to get the control surfaces, the cables or the push rods or whatever I decide to use to run through. So I've had to cut out an aperture here, and because I've cut that out, I've obviously weakened this former. So I've lined it with 1/64 ply. It's very thin, but it adds enormously to the strength. And that's far stronger than it was when it was one solid piece of balsa. The front former that sits basically, it's the back of it's the firewall. I've lined that in the same ply, and the reason for that is, if anybody's ever worked with diesel, you know that it's a very unclean, dirty fuel, and it produces a lot of oil. And that would just soak into balsa no matter how much you try to fuel proof it. So what I've done here, I've lined it with that, and that'll make for a much tougher, more resistant surface and easier to fuel proof it. This is F5, and you can see the apertures for the bearers have been cut out, and I've lined around those with ply on both sides. And the reason for this, apart from the obvious one of adding the strength, is how the undercarriage is attached. Let's have a look at that now. Hopefully I can illustrate how this works. Unfortunately I don't have the undercarriage legs. There's something I'm going to have to buy the wire and form it. But basically this is how it comes together. So if this goes onto the front, and then a box is created like this, and then this piece goes behind. Obviously bits will fall off, but that bit goes behind, and inside on both of the sides there are these guides. U1 undercarriage, obviously, undercarriage 1, undercarriage 2. Now the wire that forms the leg sits between these two pieces, and then on here it's lashed on, threaded on originally, on here, and it'll push up against the bearers. So any force that's exerted on landing will push up against the bearers here. Now, I've put the ply on because it struck me that any sort of landing is going to dig into this balsa wood quite easily. And also, any binding would dig into the balsa on the back. So I've added this plywood front and back, and instead of threading it on, I think I might actually use small cable ties. Then I can hoop them through, and you basically slide the undercarriage into this pocket which you create with these formers. Slides in, and it's bound on here, and they stop it from moving. Very ingenious, and I think a very strong structure. So that box at the front, this former here, and then we've got a box to actually put the two sides together and then pull them in at the rear with suitable spaces, and we'll do that. But before I do that, obviously the thing to do is to create this box. And I'm going to do that now by gluing it together using some engineer's squares to make sure everything's square. Glue it together, this to F9 and so on, and then we'll get everything stuck in. There you go, that's that one done. That's the beginning of the box formed. Do you know what I've done? I've glued that the wrong way around. Let's try again. Let's try that again. That wasn't a good start, was it? We all make mistakes. Some of us even learn from them. There we go, that's better. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put a little gusset in here to make up for the wood that I've ripped out due to that daft mistake. Never mind. That's the first part. Happy with that, it's at right angles. Now, I think the way to do this, clear the decks. I'm always moving things from A to B to make room for D and X and Y. It never seems to work. Move this out of the way. Get this in. Now, this can now be glued onto here. And because I've pre-formed that, even if it's not fantastically done due to my error, that's a nice rigid positioning. So let's get that glued on. There we go. These nozzles are a godsend. You buy them in packs of 100 or more. Very, very reasonable. You simply stick them onto a standard C8 bottle and you get much more precise gluing. So that's that done. This one should line up here now. like that. I'm happy with that. But before I glue it on, I nearly did it, I'm going to drill a couple of holes in here that will accept small cable ties. So I'll do that now. Luckily I noticed before I'd actually started sticking things in. I've drilled 4 holes and the cable ties, this is the diameter of wire that I need to purchase. The cable ties will simply go through here. Now, in the box position, can I reach in and get those cable ties? Well, I've actually had a practice run with these tweezers, and I've worked out that it's possible. It's a fiddle, but it's possible. So simply loop the cable tie will get pushed through from the easily accessible side, obviously first, in the upper hole. Then there'll be a bit of fiddle involving catching this and feeding it through, but it will be possible. Let's cheat for now. Pull it on, nice and tight. 2 of them, and then guides on the inside. That'll be lovely jubbly, as a sitcom in the UK used to say. Right, next job is to actually glue this in square. Now I've put the bearers in simply to help line things up, and I'm going to see here this. I know that perhaps I'll not get all the glue I want on, but there's more to come with the inserts, so I'm happy that that'll hold things firm. So if I get it lined up, it's almost clicking into place now, which I like the sound of. There is a square. I'm happy with that. Just check. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm going to run some CA on the inside. I'm going to run CA here. Don't want it on the bearers at the moment, because I'm going to epoxy those in place. They were just to line things up. I'll take this one out because I definitely don't want these to stick in just yet. Run CA along the top. And this is beginning to clog now. So I'm just going to cut the tip off, and when it gets too short I just put a new. And that's the box structure formed, the first part of it anyway. Now, to form the guide for the wire undercarriage, I need to now glue in these 2 guides here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually do them using white glue. So I'll get those glued in and then we'll come back and see what it looks like. Actually, let's see if it'll work. Yeah, it's a tight fit, but it'll work. Let's take a little bit off here. Apply the glue. Nozzle's a little bit clogged, I think. That's better. Glue, 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 glue. Push it down nice and flat. So it's PVA onto the surface, and I'm going to actually put CA along the edges. Happy with that. I'm going to use this piece of wire that I have as a guide to aid the spacing and push up. You can see, push that in into position. Bit of white glue. Come on, let's get some glue on there. That's it. Push the wire in. Push that in to lock it in position. Happy with that. Sear down this edge. That's a really nice, neat structure, I hope. So that'll push in. Obviously it'll be bent, looped in, and of course it's pushed on the other side. I think that's a really neat design for an undercarriage, and there's not a great deal of weight or impact going to be happening here, but the way that's designed, I think it's very strong. And with a little bit of addition of some thin ply, I think I've improved the design slightly. So that's the front end, nice and square. Now you'll notice that they are all flush, and when they were cut out to the lines printed on the kit, they weren't. You can't assume that when you cut things out that's exactly the right size it's meant to be. That isn't always the case, sadly, but a little bit of fettling, I've made sure that they're all the same length. Now the next square piece is this part, which is F7, and that needs to glue on here, and all I need to do there is get some sear on it, make sure it's square with the engineer's square, and that'll be the basis on which we then build a square fuselage, one that's not like the shape of a banana, unless you wanted it to be that shape, of course. So let's put some, now I'm not using white glue because I want this to be spot on and correct, and if I use white glue, Gorilla Glue, there's always the chance that things will move. No matter how much I pin it or jig it up, there's always a possibility that it isn't going to sit square. So I'm going to line this up. I'm putting the ply on the inside because it's a nice, neat finish. It'll only take a second to go off. Held in position. There we go. There are formers to go along the top here, but I'm going to add them actually when the whole thing's put together. So remove that. Oh, I managed to. Managed to stick it somewhere. There it is. It's just what's leaked through the. That's it. There we go. The beginning of a square formed fuselage. Happy with that. We need to get the jigging table set up, and that'll be the next part of the procedure. As you can see, I've got the fuselage sides, the one with the formers on and the other one ready to get in place, on a jigging table here. And for a long time I didn't have anything like this, and then I was handed this device, and it's very useful. However, before we even get to that, what I can do is set things up, because we know these are square at right angles, and this needs to be the same on this side. So I think we can glue these together before we actually start putting the spacers in here. So what I want to do is eye it up best I can, and I'm going to actually put a clamp on the end here. Keeping this like that. I'm going to zap it with CA, to be quite honest with you. That feels about right. It's not far off. Does it look square? Yeah, I think it does. Quite happy with that. I'm a great believer if it looks right, it is right. Looking down, looks square. I'm going to put some super glue in here, run some in, because I am happy with where it is. I'm holding the tension on there. Looks about right. Just put some along here. And on the inside, along the top. Happy with that. I'll hold that for a second, and then I can get this one right, and then we'll put it on the table. Right, that's okay. Gluing along the top here. Just a little tack. Now what I have done is I've marked inside at the centre a line, and that'll come in handy when it comes to lining everything up. You need 3 pairs of hands, and I don't have that. It's just tacked at the moment. I'm going to run some glue along the inside to get it all nicely attached, but that I think has tacked it into position. I haven't glued the end yet. Quite happy with that. I need to actually change the glue. I've run it out. So I'll pause it there, and then we'll set it up in the jig. I'm happy that these are glued square now. So I'm going to begin using these clamps to line everything up. And as I said, I've marked the centre line on the formers, which obviously helps matters. And this takes a little bit of fiddling to set up. Once it's set up, I can start putting the cross pieces in. You can see there that needs to push across a little. I'm going to put one here, perhaps there, and then work my way down. When I'm happy that it's all lined up, I'll glue the end piece, and then in pairs I'm going to cut out these cross pieces. It's a little bit awkward gluing them in, but it's much easier than when I didn't have this clamp. Has been something of a godsend. It's quite a primitive thing, to be honest with you, but it seems to do the job. I've used it on a couple of models now. The Mini Playboy, which had quite a demanding fuselage to line up. Without this, I think it would have been extremely difficult. So what I'm doing now is I'm lining up on the mark I've put on the bottom. because that was pushing across slightly. And you can tilt these at an angle. Push that forward a little bit more. It's a bit like setting up a 4-jaw truck in a lathe, this. You sort of loosening one side and tightening the other side. There you go. I'm happy with that. So I'm happy that that's now square. And I can see I need to, that's it, I needed to pull that across a little way. Now I can eye that up right down the centre. That looks cool. Another thing you can do, if I get a piece of this wood, is lay it down the centre line. And by looking above, I'm happy with that. It's still running down the centre line that I've selected here on the jig. And looking front to aft, it looks the same. So I'm happy with that. And now what I need to do is look at the plan, look at the spacings. That looks about right to me. It's bowing slightly here because of the force exerted there. What I'll do is I'll start cutting these in pairs and we'll start gluing them in. Before I start cutting out these cross pieces, which I think I'll do as a time lapse actually, there are some formers that I've cut out and they need to be glued into position, and they'll also help strengthen the whole setup. So I think we'll do that now. Need some glue. While I'm gluing them in, I'll try and the best I can ensure that they're all going in square. In fact, just bear with me a second. There's a small square which will help doing that. Let that set a second. And pull that one in. Now it actually shows a square section of balsa going down here across the top, which I think it might restrict access inside. It may be something that I add on after I've actually installed the servos and radio gear. I think it'll add greatly to the strength, obviously. That's that glued. Now this piece for the front, and you can see now that I've put that in, this is a neat fit, which is what we're looking for. And then there's a stopper piece that stops the wing sliding forward, and then it's shaped for the windshield. Now in place. So that already is added enormously to the rigidity of the structure. Quite happy with that. I'll time lapse this now. We'll cut those, I'll glue the top ones in, we'll flip it over and I'll do the bottom. That's the top ones added, so I think we can take this off now. I'll do that. I've just noticed I've moved a couple of these, so typical. I'll find them. I'll just slacken them off this side. Should slide out. It's looking cool, isn't it? I like the look of that. So I now need to add these cross braces, which I'll do. I've added a small former in the back there that's not glued in yet, but it's slid in nicely, which is a good sign. I'll glue these in place and then we'll take a sort of post sticky together review. Yeah? I'm calling this second video on the building of the Matador completed. There's the fuselage. Together, square. I'm really pleased with it. The jig certainly does help, although this wasn't a very demanding fuselage in terms of getting it square. When everything's curved, it's far more difficult. What I will do, and I tend to do with these stick models, is I'm going to put small triangular gussets made out of little bits of scrap inside each of the joints. It adds negligible weight but enormous strength to the structure. So that's it basically done. There's a piece to go in the top here, which I'll add at a later date. The nose area will be next. These haven't been glued in yet, but that's basically the build, and it's quite a decent size, I think. Rather pleased with that. So if you've enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps spread the word. It helps me out a little bit. And if you haven't subscribed, consider doing so. It costs you nothing, and you get to see the rest of this journey and the other modelling projects and flying activities I get up to. Thanks for tuning in. Take care now. Bye.